Hi, everyone. Welcome to the ChUG podcast. My name is David Clare. I am the technical director of the CAT facility at the University of Chicago. I am doing a solo episode today because I have no friends. I actually wanted to talk about the insurance group, insurance claims, and what happens when catastrophe hits your core facility. As you may know, a few months ago, back in June, my facility was hit by this flood. Essentially, what happened is this small tube that brings the water to the water purifying system cracked, and because of the high pressure, water spewed over multiple instruments in my facility for several hours, destroyed 4 machines, and we've been dealing with the aftermath of this event ever since. So as I'm recording this podcast, we're in mid-November, and I'm still trying to get back on our feet. And so 2 machines needs to be replaced still. So what I wanted to talk about today is essentially, it's going to sound like I'm venting, but essentially what I'm trying to do is provide some ideas of what you can expect whenever you have to deal with your insurance group. This is an N of 1. The University of Chicago is a specific situation. None of my instruments are in service contract. The University of Chicago self-insure up to a certain threshold, and from there it goes to a third party. So there's these caveats here that you need to take into account whenever you compare your situation or the situation you might get into in your own facility when you compare and the ones that we are in currently. Nevertheless, I'm hoping this is going to be helpful to somebody somewhere. If you are one of the users of the CAT facility, then you'll have an idea of what happened to the instruments and why we made the decisions that we did. Couple of points I wanted to make before I get started. The first one, again, this is going to be venting, and I think it's the typical lazy line is that the insurance companies are there to kind of screw you over. I think this is lazy, and I think this is cynical. I don't like that. I actually don't think anybody involved acted in bad faith, or everybody, as far as I can tell, everybody was quite competent in their respective roles. I think the frustration comes from this misalignment between everybody's objective, and the outcome is kind of an unsatisfying situation that we will need to deal with going forward. So that's essentially where my frustration comes from. Secondly, I have no idea how insurance companies work, to be honest. I kind of get the general principle. You need to get more money than the money you're going to dish out to support your clients. And you also need to provide good enough solutions for these clients without making them angry, so that they leave your group and go get insurance somewhere else. So it seems that it's a difficult balance to hit. I don't want that job. So what I'm going to say is I'm incredibly grateful that we had this insurance group to help us out get back on our feet, and essentially dish out way more money than what I have. Okay, so we're going to talk about the 4 machines that got destroyed. We're talking about the Attune NXT, Fortessa X20, and 2 Aurora units. 5 lasers, both of them. If you were to buy these machine, like new units, the cost would be roughly 1 million. So just to give you an idea of what kind of damage we're talking about here. So quite a bit of money. So we'll start with the Attune, which is essentially the machine that was the least impacted. As we discussed in the last podcast, the design of the instrument is actually really nice. The electronics are all stuck into this compartment that is essentially impermeable to water, to any water source, whether from inside the machine or from outside, as it turns out. And so even after the Attune had been rained on for a couple of hours, we could not find any damage on the electronic boards in the instruments, so the lasers, any kind of boards, they were all pretty much fine. And so when the service engineer showed up to survey the damage done, we basically just decided to replace the auto sampler, so the plate loader that load plates in the instrument, as well as, I believe, another board or two or whatever. So there you go. If you can, I guess the general idea here is if you can limit the damage to your instruments, you get a better chance of getting them fixed quickly and back on their feet. For the other three instruments, the damage was actually visible on several boards on the Aurora and both on the Fortessa and both of the Auroras. And so initially my thought was that we would basically just turn to the insurance group and say, hey, look at the machines, like look at how wet they are. And they would just like replace them, no questions asked. And this is just not the way it worked for us, at least. Essentially, the insurer wanted to see if there was a way to simply repair the instrument. And so there's a couple of steps there that they wanted to do. The first one is call in a third party, another company who specializes in damaged equipment due to floods or due to fires and smoke and stuff like that. And what this group does is essentially clean the electronic boards in each of the instruments. So they'll remove any signs of rust, and they will essentially measure the conductivity of the current on each of these boards. And if they know they did a good job because the conductivity is back to normal threshold, normal values. So that was the first step. The second step is then to get the manufacturers to come back and replace anything else that needs to be fixed. So any lasers, any pumps, whatever device has not been touched by the cleaning people. And at that point, once the manufacturer is satisfied with the work that's been done, they will essentially have recertified the instrument and so that it works according to their specifications. And from there, the insurance has done its job and just moves on. Everybody moves on there with their life. So that was the plan for the Fortessa and both of the Aurora. So let's talk about the Fortessa first. Honestly, it took quite a bit of time for BD to show up and survey the damage done on the instrument. But when they did, the service engineer spent quite a bit of time looking at the instrument and trying to make it work again. And you had water all over the lasers, all over the filters. The filters were now scratched and so on. And so in the end, after several hours, he just decided that he could not get the instrument to look any better. And because he basically was looking at all the parts that he thought would need to be replaced, and essentially was most of the instrument, the cost of fixing the instrument would probably get higher than the cost of a brand new unit. Secondly, I'm not sure if it's BD's official policy, but especially for this machine, they simply decided that they would never put this instrument back on the service contract, simply because at that point, they just don't know what else might go wrong. And if we just start calling BD to fix every new problem that shows up on this machine, then they probably, it would not be worth their the money we spent on the service contract. They would basically offer more service than we pay for the contract. So that was essentially their response, like, we're not going to recertify the instrument. So that's, in my mind, we turned back to the insurance group and said, well, there you go, we can't recertify the instrument, just get us a new one. Again, that's not how insurance groups work. At that point, a new plan was designed, and the idea was to find a new group instead of BD that would recertify the instrument. And a couple of weeks was spent there, and eventually nobody was available to do that work, except that during that period, the insurance group found a seller of refurbished instrument who just happened to have an X20 available. This particular one had 4 lasers, but there was an option to upgrade to the 5th lasers and rearrange the filter set the way I wanted it. So that's the solution that was proposed to us, and this quote was generated. Now, I'm not hot on refurbished machines to begin with, and honestly, I kind of cooled down on the X20 as well over the last few years, so I was not quite interested in replacing our dead X20 with a brand new one. And so we decided to look at other platforms. Now, what the insurance group allowed us to do is basically take the money for that refurbished Fortessa X20 and throw that on that new instrument, and the University of Chicago covered the rest of the cost for that new platform. So we decided to go with a Pantheon from Agilent, so 5 lasers and 30 detectors. So basically, we have this high copay for this particular instrument that kind of, well, it is what it is. So that was the X20. Let's talk about both of the Auroras next. One of these, so again, there we wanted to, the insurance wanted to clean the instrument and then have Cytec recertified, where BD said, we're not going to recertify. Cytec said, yeah, sure, we can try. Now, so for one of the machines, I made the point that, look, the machine is 1 year old. We had just ran out of this 1-year warranty. And even if we fix the instrument, we kind of cut the lifespan of that instrument in half. Like, I'm kind of expecting these Cytec instruments to last for about 10 years. So now we're going to have a machine that's going to, last half that time or whatever. And that is an argument that struck, and the insurance group decided that, okay, we're going to take the latest instrument and we're going to replace that with a brand new one. That's fine. Second Aurora unit, this is the one that is still currently being fixed. So that took quite a bit of time. And it's kind of turning into a technological whack-a-mole, essentially, where the service engineer will come in and fix like really obvious problems, need new parts, and then we'll need to wait for these parts to arrive and then come back, install the parts, and then we find new problems, wait for the other parts to show up. And it's kind of a back and forth that takes an enormous amount of time. And there's always something new every time he comes in. So that's where we are with that instrument. We'll have a machine that's been repaired. Hopefully, nothing else will pop up. And if it does, we'll likely have it on service contract just to make it get speedy response for any new problem that may arise. So it's not an ideal situation, obviously, but I think this is as good as we're going to get in these circumstances. Okay, so what have we learned? First off, the time it's going to take to deal with all these problems. If you ever end up in this same situation, you need to realize that it's going to take an enormous amount of time, and it's kind of not entirely predictable how long everything is going to get. And this is going to have an impact on the way you discuss the situation with your users. I can't count the number of times where I told my users, hey, the service engineer is going to come in and the machine's going to be ready afterwards, and we're just good to go. And then just to realize that the service engineer comes in, fix the initial problem, and then finds a new one, and suddenly, oh, we need to wait some more. So be careful with the way you present the situations. I guess the rule of thumb is you don't know until you know, and don't make promises at that point. Secondly, there's stuff you can do to not get in this situation, and this should be your goal. You like don't think insurance are magical and will do exactly what you think they will. They have a way of finding solutions that are infuriating, because it's just frustrating how they can find a way to fix your problem without doing exactly what you want. So protect your insurance. If you know, like in our case, we're in a basement of a building, so floods, like any kind of water damage that may come from the upper floors will end up in my facility as well. So all of this stuff, like if you can recognize issues in your lab that may occur. So if there's a bunch of windows and they might break or whatever, you can imagine the worst case scenario and what would be needed to mitigate any problems. So in our case, it might just be like we bought a bunch of like giant plastic tarps. So if something like that happens again, we might be able to cover the instruments while water falls down. We also have invested in these water leak detector that you stick on the ground. If the water touch the sensor, they start beeping. They also send emails to my lab manager because I couldn't make that thing to work for my own account, but whatever. So that's the type of thing. Like know your lab, identify the issues. If you have a faucet that's the pipes are leaking whenever you open the faucet, fix that. If you have like an open flame in your lab space, just like try to like put that fire out. If you have a portal to the Phobos moon base and you think nobody's ever going to be able to open that door, but then somebody realized that you just have to wiggle the monkey hand key of King Uru to get that thing open, and then who knows what kind of crap is going to come out of this portal, and try to deal with that insurance claim. So all I'm saying is fix these things right away and limit the chances of getting into such a bad spot. And lastly, be prepared to be frustrated and angered by the kind of solutions that insurance groups will provide. They might work, but they're just not the best ones ever. And so there's a couple of things here. You will not have the leverage to, you may not have, I should say, the leverage to get your insurance to change their mind about what's proposed. But you are still your own best advocate. In our case, and probably from any other universities or companies, there's going to be somebody in charge of your insurance claim. But that person may not know exactly all the things they need to know about flow stometry. On the other side of the equation, the insurance probably will have an independent assessor who's like in our case, that person is not knowledgeable in flow stometry, but is savvy in terms of technology in general. So that's the person who came up with all these different solutions. You're the most knowledgeable about your facility and your needs. And so I would try to attend every possible meetings and voice your opinion and voice your concerns as much as possible, just in case you can tilt the balance into in your favor. All right, this is all I have to say about this our situation in the CAT facility. Hopefully we'll be done with all of this within the next few weeks. I'm going to be on the nose here. I told myself I might not do that, but as the whole thing was happening, I ended up reading this book called Our Malady by Timothy Snyder. You might know him. He wrote a similarly sized book a few years back called On Tyranny, which I highly recommend. It's a guide to proper citizenship, how to be a good uh, participant in society. Um, Timothy Snyder is a historian, wrote extensively on the wars in the last century and deal with the themes of freedom and coercions and anyway, in this particular book, he visited the same themes, but through his experience with the American healthcare system, which he had to deal with because of a disease that he got just at the beginning of the COVID breakthrough. And so in this book, it's a critique of the American healthcare system and the insurance, the part the insurance group plays in it. It creates all kinds of weird incentives. For example, the money we send to the insurance group only gets back to the hospital whenever people get sick. So the incentive now is that you would hope everybody will get sick before you do, so that the hospital has all the funds it needs to treat you properly. So it's kind of weird thing to hope for. So as a Canadian, I don't really need to be convinced by the argument. I'm totally on board. Think insurance works great for stuff, flow doctors and whatnot. It's questionable when it comes to healthcare, but there you go. So that's all I have for you guys today. The next ChUG Cytometry book club will discuss War and Peace. Until then, be safe and talk to you later. Cheers.